Your eyes and your vision are under attack. Damaging blue light from the sun, your phone, your computer, your tablet, even light bulbs and car headlights is constantly bombarding you. The good news is our eyes actually already have a line of defense to counter the effects of blue light. This defense is made up of 3 pigments called carotenoids. MacuHealth with Micromicelle, the only supplement with the exclusive patent on all 3 macular carotenoids and Micromicelle technology.
The All Eyes Visual VRP is a portable vision testing platform that includes visual fields, acuity, color vision testing, pupillometry, and extraocular motility. The visual leverages virtual reality, artificial intelligence, and augmented technologies to enable eye care providers to test for and monitor common eye diseases. Visit alleyes.com for more information. With more screen usage and indoor time, myopia, also known as nearsightedness, is increasing and getting worse in children. Now, certified eye doctors can prescribe MiSight One Day, the first and only FDA-approved soft contact lens to slow myopia progression in age-appropriate children. Visit CooperVision.com to find a Brilliant Futures certified eye doctor near you. Do your patients know what presbyopia is?
There are people who are afraid of the press.
Have you talked to your patients about multifocal contact lenses?
I've heard the bifocal, but not multifocal.
Exactly, not multifocal.
Do you need help with your multifocal strategy? Learn more at the conclusion of this episode. Hello, I'm Dr. Kerry Gelb, and I want to say thank you for supporting the Open Your Eyes podcast. Our reach and growth was tremendous in 2022. Thanks to our amazing guests, sponsors, and loyal audience, we look forward to bringing you more riveting interviews in 2023. But first, I want to dedicate this episode to the great Dr. Art Epstein, who the optometry world lost in 2022. I knew Art for over 20 years. Art was not only a great doctor, teacher, and family man, but Art was a wonderful friend and person. Art was always positive. Art loved optometry and his colleagues loved Art. I often think of our great times together and our nutrition and dry eye discussions. Art, I know you're watching. We all miss you. You were certainly optometry's teacher and mentor. Is dry eyes an epidemic?
You know, that's an interesting question. When I first relocated from New York, and you know, perhaps the viewers can hear a little bit of that New York accent, to Arizona, I felt that, you know, dry eye was certainly more prevalent. But as I delved further into dry eye, which is obviously very common in the dry environment of Arizona, and eventually, you know, soon after opening our practice, limited my practice to dry eye, I began to realize that we're seeing numbers of patients that were unprecedented. We're seeing more and more dry eye than we ever have in the past, in younger and younger populations, and much greater severity. And I know we're going to talk about a lot of the underlying causes, but certainly the world has changed dramatically. Our bodies weren't designed necessarily for the world we live in today, and as a result, the eyes really take a tremendous beating, and the consequences for many patients are the misery of dry eye.
So, what is actually the definition of dry eye?
You've asked a great question. I spend a good part of my day telling patients, I know, Mrs. Smith, you're here because you've been told or you've researched on Google and concluded that you have dry eye, but the problem isn't that your eyes are dry. It's not that you're not making enough tears. The problem is that your tears are not functioning properly, you know, which kind of begs a cascade of questions about what specifically that means. What are tears? What do tears do? Fortunately, we have a good definition. We have a group called the Tear Film and Ocular Surface Society, and every 10 years or so, they host a large meeting of experts called the Dry Eye Workshop. And the most recent definition, which is something I don't have memorized, I probably should have it tattooed on, you know, on my hand, but essentially incorporates, you know, the key concepts of, tear dysfunction, failure to maintain homeostasis, which is something we could talk a fair amount about, because I think that's the genesis of a lot of diseases today, and a number of other things, changes in tear film qualities and abilities. But essentially, if you want to distill it down into the simplest form, it's one of the most miserable disorders that we face clinically, because it's chronic, it's progressive, it's persistent, and it's very disruptive to normal function.
And what are some of the things you learned, being a millennial and having to deal with an old guy like me making the film?
I actually learned a lot from you, both personally, but also in just with health. I mean, my story arc in the film follows getting a diagnosis from you, from a simple eye exam that you gave me. You were able to notice that I had some health issues, send me for blood work, and then confirm that I had some health issues. And then through your program, your 10-point plan, I was able to turn those issues around and get on a better track and reduce the inflammation in my body. So that's probably my biggest takeaway from the film. The centenarians, so just a little background on them. There's these groups of centenarians around the world. These are people that live to be 100 or older. Their lifestyle is so simple, and they're so healthy to the point that they're outliving most of us. And you'd probably be able to speak to this a lot better than me, but they really don't suffer from some of the same eye issues that we have.
Yeah, I mean, when we spoke with the ophthalmologist there, and, they really have just one main ophthalmologist in town. They have a couple of others that may travel through there, but they don't have macular degeneration. And macular degeneration is really a disease of the West. And we get it from inflammation and poor diet and processed. 63% of the food that Americans eat is processed. So that's polyunsaturated fatty acids, which is really just inflammatory oils, way too much sugar, trans fats, and processed wheat. And we just eat too much of that, too much processed foods. And everything they eat basically has one ingredient. They're eating a vegetable, or they're eating their chickens that are running around on their property, and they lay the eggs, or they kill them or whatever to eat the chicken, and they go to the market, and everything is very simple. They get water that's full with calcium and magnesium from these special places, and they sit outside a lot, which back home, the dermatologists are telling you, stay away from the sun, you're going to get skin cancer. But one of the surprises to me was these people are out in the sun all day long. The minute they get up, they go outside, sit in the sun, and they're chopping wood or whatever they're doing. And they're living over 100, and they're as healthy as could be. My journey took me to many experts in many places, and perhaps the last place I thought I would end up finding answers was looking into the eyes of centenarians in remote parts of Costa Rica. I had come to Costa Rica to meet up with the self-proclaimed myopia maniac, Dr. Javier Prada Lopez. Before visiting the kids of Costa Rica to evaluate the growing epidemic of myopia, we joined Dr. Gaston Laporte and Jorge Vindas, a field researcher specializing in the life of centenarians. Our first stop was Maria Trinidad. She's 103, and cataracts have completely robbed her vision.
¿Y cómo está su vista?
Ya casi no veo. Yo veo lo mucho pasar allá, pero no el 5.
Muchos centenarios que no usan ningún medicamento. Y es como muy común eso. En promedio.
And you can see how deep is that cataract. You see it?
Because there's such little macular degeneration with these people, if we take out her cataract, is there a good chance she'll see well?
Yes, very good chance.
Maria and the other centenarians I met were all over 100. Except for their cataracts, their eyes and overall health was really amazing. I couldn't help but wonder what this said about the people I see in the States, whose eyes, health, and bodies were in far worse shape, despite being decades younger. I wanted to know how and why our society accepted chronic and systemic diseases as some new normal, that being not sick meant being healthy. Coming from the United States and examining many patients, it's really very interesting to see a man 100 years old who to be in such fantastic shape, but his eyes also to be in fantastic shape as well. I mean, he does have cataracts, but to show no signs of macular degeneration. The front of his eye looks very, very good. It's very impressive.
Yeah, I think he is unique, and all of this kind are unique, and we have to study more to see what is happening with them.
It's really incredible too when, you know, watching the film and you know, some of the clips that we have in there. They're chopping wood and riding horses, doing things that I would say most people would struggle to do when they're young, and they're just keeping up with it.
So what do you think, how do you think the millennials are going to react to the film?
So over the past few years, I've been talking to everyone I know about this incessantly. And one of my other biggest takeaways from the film was I didn't know what optometrists do. I had always thought, you know, you just go in, you read the chart with the letters and you get your eyes examined. And then in my case, have to get glasses or contacts. And what I learned since doing the film and talking to everyone I know, most people and most millennials in general don't know what you guys do. I think the film is going to be incredibly eye-opening to people on why they need to go visit their optometrist. I know a lot of people my age now are doing online eye exams, which I actually did one as a test just to see how it would compare with the real experience. And a lot of people are doing that, not going in to see their optometrist, getting like cheap glasses and cheap contacts that are causing them some problems. And because they just think that optometry is getting your eyes checked for new glasses, I think they're able to kind of take this shortcut around it. Whereas what I think the film does a great job of doing is explaining, okay, wow, optometrists can see into your eyes using this imaging machine. And from that, they're able to look at the microaneurysms and figure out if you might have some health problems. I think it's over 300 diseases can be detected through your eye. And I think that that's going to be the biggest oh wow to people watching, and especially people my age who maybe didn't grow up going to the optometrist regularly. You know, a lot of people, I mentioned earlier, my fiance, she had never been to an eye doctor before her eyes started going, for lack of a better word, before she started becoming a little myopic. And she had no idea that that you guys were more than just getting glasses, because I think optometry didn't get the same kind of media attention that like dentistry did. So I think that this film does a great job of getting that message out there, along with the message that we should all live kind of a healthier lifestyle and how important lifestyle is in general. I think for millennials, and myself included, I was not aware of how much lifestyle contributes to your health and your body, and how quickly bad behaviors and choices, whether it be with food or lack of sleep or anything like that, how quickly those can have negative impacts on your health.
So the way food is being manufactured now, is there enough vitamins and minerals in our food anymore compared to what it was in the 50s?
That's a great question, Kerry. I know when I first moved from the NIH into this industry, you know, where I thought maybe we could make a bit more impact, that was a very strong theory, right? Is that the carrots that you get today may not have all the nutrients that the carrots that your grandma grew. I guess that may be true. certainly things are treated differently, and we're, the growth of the vegetables is sort of on a mass-produced level. I tend to think more in terms of diversity. Like, when you think of a carrot, it's always orange. But actually, a couple of 100 years ago, they were orange, they were purple, they were yellow. We had a greater sort of biodiversity of the vegetables and the fruits that we ate. And this is what caused the problems in Ireland with the potato blight, right? Is they had limited so much the genetics of their potatoes that they didn't have any diversity when a disease came through and wiped everything out. And I think our body's the same. We need a lot of diversity in our diet. We have the opportunity in our modern times to eat better than the medieval kings. We can get fruits and vegetables from all over the world shipped in. It would be nice if we increased the diversity. And I think too, I do agree. In my own house, I grow a lot of my own vegetables. It's all organic. I sort of have this ecosystem where the chickens are being fed the scraps. They're creating the manure that goes to feed the vegetables, and there's less need for insecticides and artificial fertilizers. I think there's a role for it, but I like diversity, and I like natural sort of growth of the vegetables.
At one time, they used to put 52 minerals to help grow the vegetables. Now it's just NPK. Is that enough?
Yeah, I agree. Probably not enough. But plants, just like humans, need all of the nutrients, not just sort of the sum. They're probably doing their own triage, right? And that's kind of interesting too, right? Is that you grow the vegetables, and there's this. I'm not sure if you're sort of familiar with the hormetic effect, but
Yes.
Let's say I live in Arizona, and I'm growing the vegetables.
Like weightlifting, with stress, we want to stretch the vegetables to make more polyphenols, and the vegetable makes more polyphenols. It's better for us.
Yes, exactly. So if I'm living in a really hot, dry desert environment and I'm growing my vegetables there and I'm eating them there, those vegetables are experiencing the same hot sort of sun and all of the radiation. They are then, their defense mechanisms create these polyphenols and carotenoids and other defense mechanisms that then we eat that become part of our defense mechanisms. So there's some sense to sort of keeping things local as well, isn't there?
So tell me about the EAR, the estimated average requirement, and the RDA, the recommended dietary allowance. Are those enough? What are they? And, we don't really use EAR. We use in the United States, really, the RDA. And, for a time that's thought that may not be enough. That's just the minimum that somebody needs.
Right. Yeah, I certainly can't quote all of the numbers for you, but just in general terms, there is a real paradigm there. And that is that when nutritionists over the past few decades have calculated what we need, it's often generally the minimum that we require to prevent a deficiency disease. And in order to prevent scurvy, for example, you need about 60 milligrams of vitamin C. So it varies from country to country. I think in Australia, it might be 80 milligrams. Here it's 60, but the scientists generally agree that will prevent the deficiency disease that's really awful. And so you've got to get at least 60. But then if you look at the literature, you realize that, again, vitamin C is not a cofactor for only creating and helping to build the collagen healthily, but there are other systems in the body as well. So if you look at Linus Pauling, he looked at vitamin C and said, well, you need like 20 grams a day. It has all sorts of impact. Maybe I think the truth is somewhere in the middle. Certainly, I think 500 milligrams, something like that, is important because it's also an antioxidant. So it plays a huge role in other systems of the body, not just in the deficiency diseases. So, and you can really extrapolate that to a lot of the vitamins and minerals. That doesn't mean that we sort of need to mega dose, but again, those daily values are sort of a minimum requirement, I think, for the most part. And again, it's our responsibility. The take-home message is eat a diet rich in fruits and vegetables that's diverse, that has all these vitamins and minerals in them. And as an insurance policy, as Bruce Ames would say, take a multi. It's not that, doesn't have to be that expensive.
And how about bioavailability? How do we make sure we're getting these vitamins into the body so we could use them?
Yeah, that's really important as well. There's, you look at the way that things would normally be delivered into the body, right? Say iron, for example. The CDC would recommend for a pregnant woman to have 60 milligrams of iron based on iron oxide as a supplement. But we do know that, say, if you're eating meat and it's chelated with the heme molecule, you need less and it's easier on the stomach. There are some enterprising companies that have come up with chelated minerals, kind of started in the agriculture area, but now you can buy really nicely chelated iron where you only really need about 15 milligrams to get the same impact, and it's more gentle on the stomach. So yeah, bioavailability is super important. And it also is important in the way that we get our nutrients, the way that we eat. So you may remember, Kerry, back in the 90s, the devil was fat, right? Everyone's overweight because we're getting too much fat in our diet. And so the food industry sort of shifted, pivoted towards fat-free, and everyone, even fat-free salad dressing. And that, I think, messed up a lot of bioavailability type paradigms. For example, think of a salad that you're eating that's rich in carotenoids and polyphenols. Carotenoids, for example, are fat soluble. The vitamin E is a fat soluble nutrient. And, some olive oil, some real fat on that salad actually helped your body to help those carotenoids to be more bioavailable. And suddenly we're not getting all that we can out of the salad because we've sort of shifted erroneously, I believe, towards a sort of a fat phobic mentality. And there are other things that you can do as well. You might ask someone, well, what's more bioavailable in terms of carotenoids, a raw tomato or raw carrot or cooked? And it's maybe not all that intuitive, but steamed carrot is going to have more bioavailable carotenoids than a raw one. Even though, sure, I don't discourage you from eating raw, but if you crack open those cells and make those carotenoids more bioavailable, then that may be helpful.
How about if you put it in a blender or you juice it? What happens then?
Yeah, I do that all the time. I mean, every day I'm juicing kale and carrot and beet and apple, and so it makes it easier to digest, and I would think more bioavailable as well. So yeah, I'm a real fan of juicing.
OCT has really changed optometry, for so much of the better, and it really helps our patients. We can now see down to 5 or 6 microns with OCT, and with spectral domain, we're going to be able to see 1 micron. So we're kind of put in a position where we're going to see disease way before other primary care doctors can see disease.
Oh, absolutely. And we're starting to do that now, right? We see, especially in the patient with diabetes, we're picking up the capillary changes that are out there, macular degeneration. We're picking up, the drusen formation that's out there. So you are 100% correct. We're picking up diabetic retinopathy before it's really retinopathy that you would see with a 78 or 90, the classic, what I would say maybe the macro changes that we were taught in school, the dot and blot hemorrhages and the exudate. Now we can start seeing the micro changes that are out there.
And soon we're going to be the first doctors that are going to help diagnose Alzheimer's sooner. There's some changes on OCT as far as Alzheimer's. If you could talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. So, the eye is fascinating, right? It really is connected to just about everything that's out there. We talk of, skin, and then we have the vasculature that we're talking about here with diabetes. And now you're just talking the neurological side of it. And there's a part of the eye that's called the ganglion cell and the ganglion cell body. And its axon goes all the way, back into the brain, deep into the brain. And whenever it becomes sick or traumatized, it atrophies away. So the ganglion cell complex, which can be measured within the OCT, can take on some certain patterns that are out there. Believe it or not, just recently they're saying that, people that have, pituitary adenomas, and we're used to picking that up maybe with a confrontation field, bitemporal hemianopia, and we do a visual field. It's showing, so bitemporal, binasal can show up maybe 2 to 3 years earlier, but even before the visual field defect, which then goes back to your original question here, the neurological side with regarding, Alzheimer's and dementia. and maybe helping the docs with the diagnosis, and then how's the treatment going with the progression. So really exciting stuff that's out there for the future.
Yeah, and we could see that the choroid is starting to get thinner. Those blood vessels are dropping out, and some of the capillaries start dropping out. So right now, there's nothing specific that says, okay, well, this is Alzheimer's. But hopefully, we're going to get there within the next 5 years, and the neurologists are going to be referring to us for OCTs to confirm whether or not somebody may have Alzheimer's. So if we look at the future of OCT, how can OCT maybe be used during surgery?
Well, basically where it's being used for surgery right now is in the macular hole type of situation when they're doing epiretinal membrane peels and looking at the hole, just to make sure that they're getting the position of that macula. So just before and after surgery, especially after surgery, to see how that hole is and do they have to go in and reposition. So, that's really some new cutting edge, using it during surgery. Just in retina surgery is basically what it is. That's really where the OCT shines, but this OCT, it's, you got anterior segment now. So we're looking at it with cornea. We're looking at it just anterior chamber, everything that's going on with the anterior chamber, and then going back to the retina. So basically where it's being used in surgery would be back in the retina side.
We're almost like we're a pathologist, the way we can look at the retina and the nerve tissue.
Yeah, you nailed it. This is pathology in a sense, live pathology in a sense. So just a different form of it.
And now we have OCT angiography, which came out around 2014. Explain what OCT angiography is and how that could help us with diagnosing different diseases in patients.
Yeah, so we always say that the crime must fit the punishment. So there's two types of OCTs if you really kind of want to think about it. There's your B scan OCT, which optometrists, when I do a lecture and you ask how many people have OCTs, that's probably about 70 to 90%, depending on what audience you're doing. 70 to 90% will raise their hand saying that they have an OCT. It's the B scan. It's kind of that cross sectional that we're used to seeing. And you're right. In 2014, what happened is with spectral domain and being able to get these instruments to get up to about 70,000 scans per second, what they were able to do with the technology is what's moving versus not moving, which in that case, the blood would be moving, the red blood cells and the white blood cells, and they're able to track movement and subtract out what's not moving, and you get a nice image of the capillaries of the inner retina, particularly that superficial and deep plexus. Now, we always say the crime must fit the punishment, and the diabetes is a capillary disease. So we're really getting some early detection with capillary dropout before you get the B scan changes. Same thing with macular degeneration. We're able to get choroidal neovascular membranes, especially those occult ones, growing down below the RPE because fluorescein angiography can't see below the RPE. And we're starting to pick up on these capillaries from macular degeneration. So really, the two big diseases where OCT angiography shines, where the crime fits the punishment, would be diabetes and macular degeneration.
So let's get into it. What exactly is glaucoma?
I think that you did a fantastic description. I think that we need to reset our understanding of glaucoma. And I think that the concept of Alzheimer's for the optic nerve is really a really interesting way of thinking about it. And I do think, Carrie, that we should be thinking about glaucoma as a neurodegenerative disease, because in fact it is a neurodegenerative disease. The optic nerve in glaucoma is what degenerates. And there are a lot of things that people talk about, in terms of pressures and trauma and drops. And there's a lot of shrubbery I like to talk about, in terms of like how the confusion of what is glaucoma. Is it pressure? Is it this? Is it that? But the reality is it's really important to focus on the anatomy and the physiology of what's going on. And it comes down to it's the optic nerve dying off. And people have to, when I try to explain glaucoma, it really is an optic nerve degeneration. It's like and of course the optic nerve is essentially like an extension of your brain. So Alzheimer's disease is where we start to lose cognitive function. And there's a lot of different components that go into why people develop Alzheimer's, dementia, and other types of neurodegenerative diseases in the brain and other parts of the body. But with the eye, it's the same thing. It's a nerve. It's simply a nerve that's losing function and starts to die. In fact, to be more specific, as you know, the optic nerve is really not a single nerve. It's a bundle of nerves. And I really like to emphasize, and I like to think about that this nerve, which is basically brain tissue or neurotissue, is dying off, and glaucoma is the condition whereby this dies off. And that's a very simple description, in my opinion, of the process. But what's actually causing it, just like Alzheimer's disease, what causes it and how to fix it, obviously, is challenging because it's a neurobiology base. It's something that's based in neurobiology.
Somebody that has glaucoma, is there a greater risk for them to get Alzheimer's disease later on?
There are some studies that do indicate that people who have glaucoma do have a higher risk of Alzheimer's, but it may not be as simple as what the description is. In other words, it might be that the risk factors that go into getting Alzheimer's are similar to the risk factors that go into getting glaucoma. And so the answer is yes. If you develop glaucoma, your risk in some studies show that you do have a slightly higher rate of Alzheimer's, but that may have nothing to do with the specifics of like getting glaucoma and then getting Alzheimer's. It just may be, for instance, if you have a high inflammatory component in your nervous system. So like they think that Alzheimer's disease, it's an inflammatory disease to some extent, a vascular disease. And it's the same thing for glaucoma. It's like the same idea as like if you have heart disease, your chances of getting stroke are higher. But just because you have a heart attack doesn't mean you're going to get a stroke. It's just the risk factors are the same. And that's exactly the same thing that's true for Alzheimer's disease and glaucoma.
MacuHealth, your science-born and tested solutions for visual performance, macular degeneration, and dry eye syndrome. New products coming soon. Embrace the science.
The All Eyes Visual VRP is a portable vision testing platform that includes visual fields, acuity, color vision testing, pupillometry, and extraocular motility. The visual leverages virtual reality, artificial intelligence, and augmented technologies to enable eye care providers to test for and monitor common eye diseases. Visit alleyes.com for more information. We've always thought that glaucoma meant high pressure in the eye. Is it that simple, or is it more than that?
Right. It's so much more complex than just pressure. And in fact, if you look at the definition of glaucoma by the American Glaucoma Society, AGS, and other definitions, pressure does not even enter into the definition of glaucoma because it's the same thing as Alzheimer's disease. One of the things that we think causes Alzheimer's disease is basically having bad health like having bad heart disease or having high cholesterol. So it's the same kind of thing that with just because you have high cholesterol and you get Alzheimer's, and that puts you at greater risk for Alzheimer's. The same thing is true for glaucoma. If you have heart disease, and the same process that goes into causing heart disease can also cause glaucoma, it's the same thing. That it may be that there are other factors that go into causing the pressure to get higher. Pressure is really, in some respect, an indicator of other processes going on. In fact, there are some indications, and there's some really interesting studies that indicate that pressure is, really, unless the pressure's very, very high, even a moderately elevated pressure doesn't always guarantee you to get glaucoma. In fact, there are so many patients who exist right now who have elevated eye pressure and don't have glaucoma. And just the opposite is true, that there's a good number of patients, something like the order of like 20 or even 30% of all glaucoma patients may actually have normal pressure and actually have glaucoma. Because again, it's the nerve that's getting damaged. And whether the nerve, it's not just pressure. Pressure may be a result of other systemic inflammatory conditions in your body, or heart disease, or vascular problems. So the pressure may be just one sort of an indicator. It may just be a side effect, so to speak, or it may even be the body's response to trying to protect the nerve in a crazy way. There may be some aspects of why the pressure goes up that actually is the body's way to protect the nerve. Just like with macular degeneration, where blood vessels are growing in and causing all this problem. And with macular degeneration, the blood vessels may actually be trying to attempt to heal the problem. In fact, it doesn't. We don't want to get into macular degeneration, but it's a very complex process. And I think you really have to think about glaucoma as a large number of issues, a large number of risk factors that can go into damaging this nerve.
16% of people who get glaucoma actually go blind in both eyes. Can you explain the difference between blindness from glaucoma and, say, macular degeneration and some other eye diseases?
Yeah, and we might want to go back to what is blindness. I mean, blindness basically means that your central vision goes down below, I think it's 2200 best. In other words, the ability to the best correct somebody. So it's not without glasses. I'm saying when you have contact lenses or glasses, the best you can get is 20/200 in terms of visual acuity. And the question then is whether, with any kind of blindness, if that central visual acuity goes down, then we hit that definition. So the difference, for instance, with glaucoma is that it doesn't always affect the central vision. Often it affects the peripheral vision, your side vision, or chunks of your vision. So you could have like part of your vision in glaucoma can be perfectly 20/20, but then another part is it's complete blackness and blindness in that section. So think of the world that you're looking at. If it would almost like imagine like a keyhole or like some kind of a Pac-Man kind of appearance to how you see the world. Like you see everything except there's a little Pac-Man bitten out of the circle where you can't see it, and like a wedge defect, almost like a wedge of vision that's just gone. So that could be in your central vision, but sometimes it's in your peripheral vision in glaucoma. In the case of macular degeneration, it usually hits the center part of the vision. So the types of blindness you have in the different diseases is very different depending on the disease process and the type of condition you have. But the end result is that your central vision goes. Now there are definitions. I mean, you can in some cases in retinal diseases, you can actually have the peripheral vision can be maintained and the central vision's gone. And then in glaucoma, you could actually have just the opposite. You could have almost perfect central vision. In fact, you could have a very, very, very small little area right in the center of your vision that's absolutely perfect and crisp, but then you can't see anything beyond this very, very narrow tunnel vision. That can also happen in retinal disease, by the way, as you know.
So it's often said it's not what you eat, but it's what you absorb or your microbes eat. What is your feeling about that?
For many, many years, we've been completely obsolete concerning, this, community that we co-evolve with, and, we can, we share our life journey. In the past, we thought that, there were some microorganisms there that can eventually, give us trouble. And that's mainly what we were focused on. And, once in a while, Mother Nature reminds us, like this pandemic, that the war with the microbes is not far by any stretch of imagination. But that was a myopic, to use ophthalmology terms, view, because the vast majority of microorganisms, actually, they are very friendly with us. They really want to have a peaceful relationship with us because we want mutual, benefits. In exchange of hospitality and food that we provide to them, they will really give in exchange a variety of benefits that we just recently start to appreciate. They help us to, scavenge the ideal amount of nutrients from food. Some of the food that we have, fibers, for example, we cannot make use of it, and they will eventually scavenge, additional nutrients for us. They provide, essential vitamins that we don't have enough intake with the nutrition. But most importantly, and that's where the vast majority of the science is focusing right now, the microbiome, this ecosystem, mainly the one in the GI tract, really program our immune system, specifically in the early part of life, the first 1,000 days of life, to decide if, when, why, and how to unleash, weapons that will defend us against enemies, and when to turn this off. So that's where really we start to appreciate that this goes way beyond just providing food to folks, but again, having the friendly symbiotic relationship with this parallel world will bring us in a trajectory to play our genetic cards in a way that we will live a better life.
Hippocrates said all disease begins in the gut. The more you study this, are you starting to believe this to be more truth or less truth?
Now almost 15 years ago, not Hippocrates, of course, is by chapeau to Hippocrates, but I rephrase this and I say that the gut is not like Las Vegas. What happened in the gut does not stay in the gut. Meaning that, depending how we interplay with these microorganisms, how they, set up the ecosystem and so on and so forth, leads to consequences, not just in the GI tract, but any organ and tissue or district of our body may be affected for better or for worse, depending how we establish this relationship. Is it a friendly relationship, then we'll be protected and we will mitigate inflammation that is the common denominator of all diseases you can imagine. If on the other hand, we have a belligerent microbiome that doesn't play, fairly with us, then we have consequences and we will have we'll be more prone to develop inflammation and therefore to not live a good life.
The modern parent is running after their kids with antibacterial soap. Are we too clean for our own good?
I think so. Again, I'm not advocating that we have to go back in the cave and live like the caveman by all stretch of imagination. But again, there is a proper line in which you want to have, the hygiene to mitigate the chance that you and the people that live with you will be in trouble. And on the other hand, to destroy this ecosystem. Let me give them a classical example because it's under our, nose and eyes, i.e. the pandemic, okay? There is no question that we were able, before that vaccines were available, that we were able to really mitigate the negative impact. And we pay a dear price in terms of morbidity and mortality by washing our hands, keeping distance, wearing masks, and so on and so forth. The cost-benefit ratio call in that case to really implement hygiene to mitigate the spreading of a bad microorganism, this virus that we never dealt with. Conversely, it's pretty obvious, the flip of the coin, that if you live in a rural area together with animals, you put, in other words, your hands in your dirt and so on and so forth, that helps tremendously to mitigate the risk to develop, let's say, allergies or other chronic inflammatory diseases. So this is a long way to answer your question. It depends on the conditions of your life. When you are under attack with a microorganism, you want to implement more strict hygiene. But in general, we're getting too clean for our own goods. And if you compare, the Western lifestyle, compared to rural developing countries' lifestyle, the developing countries, they still live a lifestyle more in tune with our biological evolution, the way that we evolved as a species. We're not. And what happened is that these folks, they still pay a price with infectious diseases because they have malaria, they have cholera, they have dengue, and so on and so forth. But we're not better off, because in exchange of these acute infections, now we have these chronic non-infective diseases that are skyrocketing high: autoimmune disease, neurodegenerative diseases, neuroinflammation, allergies. They are typical who embrace a Western lifestyle. Among the others is the extreme hygiene.
What do you say to the parents that are running after their kids with the antibacterial solutions to kill the bacteria on their hands, on their face, and not letting them outside? What can you say to them to have them realize why it's important to about the hygiene hypothesis and be involved with the environment?
So, going back to the microbiome, this is not something that is in a vacuum, in a niche in the GI tract and is stable. It's extremely dynamic. And we are part of a much bigger picture that we don't realize. We really, belong to and depend on the soil, the water, the air, that are elements, niche, where these microbes, they have their vital cycle. So if we don't have a in tune synchrony with our surrounding, if we pollute our water, if we do not have a healthy relationship with this, circle of life, so to speak, then this exchange of microbes that we continuously do between us and the environment, it takes the wrong turn. Now, you put a roadblock with this excessive, cleaning, that circle of life that is meant to maintain this dynamic, friendly, symbiotic relationship will be affected, no matter how you want to see it. Again, I'm not saying that we have to go back to the cave. I'm not saying that, hygiene is not important. After all, again, cholera, for example, if you implement hygiene and the water, supply, cleaning, and so on and so forth, you stop the process of transmitting cholera. SARS-CoV-2, if you wash your hands, you eventually stop that. But this is not necessary all the time, because otherwise, if you continue this excessive hygiene, you put roadblocks on this continuous exchange with the surrounding environment, and this is not good for our ecosystem.
So let's dive into the symptoms. What are some of the symptoms that a dry eye patient will experience?
Yeah, and that's a great question too, because there's actually 16 million people that are diagnosed with dry eye disease, but we feel as optometrists and ophthalmologists that there's probably a lot more that are out there that just don't realize that they have dry eye. So there's probably twice that number of people that have dry eye, but they just don't realize that they have it. So some of those symptoms are, it can be a wide range from burning, stinging of the eyes, a foreign body sensation, the redness, of course, worsening. Sometimes it's worse in the morning, sometimes it's worse at the end of the day. And actually it's kind of counterintuitive, but watering is a symptom of dry eyes. So your eyes are making enough of the quantity of tears, so the watery part of the tears, but it's not a good quality tear. So you probably don't have enough of that oil layer, the lipid layer. So the lacrimal gland is producing all these tears, but then they're just not staying in the eye. So it feels like they're watering. And a lot of times I tell my patients that, oh, well, your eyes water, you have dry eyes. And they say, well, that doesn't really make sense. But then when you explain it, they say, oh, okay, now I get it.
So explain why that happens.
Yeah, so your tear film has to be in a perfect balance. We call it homeostasis. So right now we feel there's 3 layers of the tear film. There's some people that say there's actually 2 layers, but traditionally there's 3 layers of the tear film. There's the mucin layer, which kind of holds everything together. There's the watery layer, which is, that's what or aqueous is what we call it. We normally think of the aqueous layer when we think of tears. And then there's that lipid layer, so the top layer. And we really need all those 3 layers to be in a perfect balance. And if not, then we get, either all the symptoms, so the dryness or the watering. So if you don't have enough of that lipid layer, then you're going to have that excess watering.
If you go through the different layers from mucin to aqueous to lipid,
Yeah.
what part of the eye makes each layer, and what's the function of each part of the tears?
Yeah, so the goblet cells, they the goblet cells make the mucin layer. And so the mucin kind of holds everything together. The lacrimal gland makes the watery part of the tears. And the water part of the tears, that has all kinds, it actually has 1,500 different components to it. So the tear film is actually really amazing, all the different things that it can do, from anti-inflammatory to, just all kinds of different things, that factors that we need to have a nice healthy tear and a healthy eye. And then there's that lipid layer, which is made by those meibomian glands that are right in the lid margin. Right there is where they come out, where the oil comes out. So, and that's that oily part of the tears that we need to keep everything stable.
Every once in a while, we get a big, strong guy, like a military guy, comes into the office, and he's at work, and all of a sudden his eyes are tearing. And he gets very embarrassed that he's crying, and he wants to know what we can do, especially if he goes out in the wind and the wind hits his eyes and starts tearing. What kind of tricks can we tell people like this to help them?
Yeah. So I would definitely tell them, and it's embarrassing to patients. It actually really affects their mental health, and I have a lot of women who their eyes are really red, or they can't wear makeup because their eyes are so sensitive. And you really feel for those patients, because it affects their lifestyle, and it just affects their overall quality of life, really. And so for those watery ones, it's usually we have to fix those meibomian glands. So we recommend that they go ahead and see their local optometrist and get a really good eye exam. If you can find someone that specifically specializes or is more passionate about dry eye, that's even better, because they might have extra tools like meibography. But you really don't need fancy equipment to be able to treat dry eye. So if you get a really good exam, they can give you great recommendations. And some just sort of starter recommendations are artificial tears, especially lipid-based artificial tears that are preservative-free. Nothing like Visine or gets the red out, because those can actually make your eyes more dry if you use them for too long. So a nice artificial tear that's lipid-based, because that gets that oil back into the tear film. Then after that, we recommend
I'm sorry to interrupt for a second. Give us a recommendation on a lipid-based artificial tear.
Yeah, so there's quite a few out there. I personally like Refresh Uptive is a good one. Sustained Balance is a good one. What else is out there? Retain, MGD. So if you go to the pharmacy, it is a little bit overwhelming because there's so many options. But if you just look for something that it says just artificial tear, nothing that says gets the red out, and you look at those little vials that are preservative free, those are really the best ones. And it should probably say something on it about a lipid based, but those are a couple options for you.
The All Eyes Visual VRP is a portable vision testing platform that includes visual fields, acuity, color vision testing, pupillometry, and extraocular motility. The visual leverages virtual reality, artificial intelligence, and augmented technologies to enable eye care providers to test for and monitor common eye diseases. Visit alleyes.com for more information.
Your eyes and your vision are under attack, damaging blue light from the sun. Your phone, your computer, your tablet, even light bulbs and car headlights is constantly bombarding you. The good news is our eyes actually already have a line of defense to counter the effects of blue light. This defense is made up of 3 pigments called carotenoids. MacuHealth with Micromicelle, the only supplement with the exclusive patent on all 3 macular carotenoids and Micromicelle technology.
Fitting multifocal contact lenses presents a big opportunity to meet patient needs while growing your practice. Alcon is your partner not only with our innovative portfolio, but through e-learning. Learn to enhance your multifocal strategy today with the Alcon Experience Academy.
OIE Broadcasting is the emerging leader in social media. We use scientific entertainment to drive more patients into your office. Visit oiebroadcasting.com and sign up today.